And I'd like to invite Mr. Gene Frantz now from Texas Instrument. He will tell us how the IC technology will affect cloud computing for us. Mr. Gene Frantz.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. What I will spend the next 15 or 20 minutes talking about is what we do as an integrated circuit company to make sure that all of the dreams that you have in your head might come true. And so I would like to start out with a fun little question, and that is, what makes you feel naked? Now that sounds strange for a presentation of this nature, but let's think about, over the years, what we now kind of feel that if we don't have makes us naked. For example, many of us have grown up in the era where if we don't have our seatbelt on when we get in our cars, we just don't feel quite right, like we're ready to take to the streets. Sunglasses. Many of us just can't make it out the door without our sunglasses. We just feel naked without them. Or now we're beginning to find that if we don't have our smart cell phone or our iPhone or our BlackBerry in our pockets, we just aren't prepared to go out. We are naked. Some of us need our water. What's next? I show here something that every diabetic knows that they need to have around, and that is something to monitor their insulin. And so we find that more and more what we are beginning to have is more things around us that we feel naked without. Now, what does that have to do with the cloud or the intelligent planet? It is very important that as we move forward, more of what we provide in this fishnet or this intelligent planet becomes so much part of us that we feel naked without it. So with that, let me talk about that in 4 areas. Where did it start? What does IC technology have to do with it? And what are some of the markets as a driver? And then finally, that fun question of so what? You've seen this in a different form, but I like to talk to the story and talk about computers and ask the fun question, what was the innovation that got the computer from a very large room to my pocket? And so let's look at that and just look at a little history and think it through. I have some quotes here, and I always like to use some quotes. They're fun to think about and to try to figure out what went wrong. This quote, from IBM, and it's an enjoyable quote. I don't know if you all remember it, but many years ago, Thomas Watson said, "There will only be a need for 5 computers in the whole world." Now, I argue he was only 2 words off in the correct thing to say, and that the correct way to say that is there will only be a need for 5 computers per person in the world. Some of you might argue that it's more like 50. And as we move forward the next decade, it could very well be 50 or 500, but it isn't 5 for the whole world. I was part of this beginning, and that is the home computer of many years ago. I have a quote there, and I note it's an ex-TI employee, and that is, the killer app will be recipes. I don't think any of us put recipes on our computers. In fact, the killer app was Lotus 123 or the spreadsheet, but perhaps he was just wrong by 20 years, because last year we introduced at the CES in the US with Whirlpool the concept of a computer in the kitchen where the counter surface became the monitor and your hand became the mouse, so you could move from one to the next slide or the next thing on the computer without any of the dirtiness of the countertop destroying any part of the computer. It was a quite ingenious idea that was created, but again, it may allow us to put recipes on our computers. Here's another one, and that is the home computer, or the PC, personal computer, professional computer came along, and there's another quote. There will never be a need for more than 640K. Anybody remember that quote? Good, I'm glad you remember it. Maybe it's only one letter off. Maybe it should have been, there will never be a need for more than 640 gig, or G. And as I say that, many people are thinking you mean T, not G. But we can keep it to a letter. But what's happened is gotten to our pockets. Now, I think it's important that we have to come to an answer of what was the innovation that got it to my pocket. I argue it was not a technical innovation, but the innovation was somebody convinced me that I could not live my life without a computer in my pocket. And so the innovation is, I need that in my pocket or I just can't live. So hold on to that. Let me give you 3 examples of how that has flourished in our society today. Telephony used to be in a big room, and some of us can remember what it means to ring up the operator. What's happened? It is now something in our pocket. Photography used to be a big room. If you wanted to take a picture, you had to take the darkroom with you. It's ended up in our pockets. Music, if you wanted to listen to music, not many years ago you had to go to a concert hall or the town square to listen to music. Now it's in our pockets. And in fact, you're thinking all 3 of those are now, along with my computer, in my pocket, all in the same device. All of them are there because somebody convinced us that we just could not live our lives. We would feel naked without that in our pockets. I remember when I heard about the first cell phone with a camera. I thought it was the dumbest idea I had ever heard. Now I have 2 cell phones, both with cameras. Somehow I have changed my mind. But that revolution continues on. This slide is one I use to talk about a brand new market where technology will be able to change our lives, and that's medicine. So we can say quickly that the 80s was a computer revolution. The 90s was a telecommunications revolution. And what we're in the midst now is a whole bunch of new revolutions, one of which is healthcare. I am a strong proponent of the concept of health, don't leave home without it. And with that meaning, wherever I am, I can be certain that technology and the products that are created with technology can do 3 things for me. They can manage my chronic diseases, they can predict my catastrophic diseases, and they can make the last days of my life comfortable at home rather than someplace else. So what does IC technology have to do with this? When I talk about what IC technology has allowed, it has allowed several things, and I've enjoyed over the years watching digital signal processing go from a university curiosity to something we just expect in our everyday lives. And the reasons are these 3 P's of value. What we found over the years is every time we could significantly increase performance, new things were thought of that could be done that had never been possible before. We also found that as we reduce the price of those components, new things could be thought of that had never been thought of before. If you'll notice, I have some pictures down there. The reason I have those is TI has a long history of demonstrating the legitimacy of a technology with low price. In the mid-50s, we worked with a company to create the first transistor radio to show that the transistor had value. In the early 70s, we worked to create the calculator to prove that the integrated circuit had value. In the late 70s, we created this toy to teach spelling and a few other things to show that the whole world of digital signal processing could be used in significantly other areas because it could be done in a consumer product. In the late 80s, early 90s, we worked with several companies to create digital cell phones so that we could show the world that wireless communications could be useful in every aspect of our lives. The last one that we found was ultra low power. We have found that as we can reduce the power dissipation of devices, there are new markets to be found, many of which will be a part of the cloud computing era that we're in the midst of. So let me go to the so what. I don't like when we try to talk about the cloud as an organized structure in the world. I chose to call all those things around the cloud clutter. I have a professor friend in the United States who gives a talk on the swarm around the cloud, and I think the swarm implies too much organization. I think it's just clutter. And so let me give you an example. Coffee cup down in the lower center. I believe someday I will be able to go into Starbucks and order the infinite cup. And they will give me a cup that is tied to the cloud. And as I sit at my table reading my email and doing whatever else I want to do on my computer, when my cup begins to get empty, somebody comes over and pours in my cup exactly what I need to refill it, and my credit card gets charged a bit of money. Now that's a great service for me because I hate getting up and going back and buying another cup of coffee. It also provides a great opportunity for making money by Starbucks because they charge me every time they do it, and they also know exactly when I need it. And so you can begin to see that what the cloud will present to us is not services that already exist, but it allows us to dream very broadly on, gee, what could I do given I'm attached to the cloud? So, what does that mean? We have the cloud, we have the clutter, and we have the communication pipes between. All require significant different kinds of technology. In the cloud, we need high performance technology to allow us to reduce the power of our memory systems, of our servers, to convert our data to information. So there's a lot of places where high performance signal processing, high performance processing is vital for the cloud to be there. But in the clutter, we need ultra-thin clients, we need smart sensors, we need a lot of things that allow us to connect to the cloud. And so the pipes between the clouds, the pipes from the cloud to the clutter, the pipes between the clutter, all are going to be different. The good news is you can find all of those technologies available. All that is lacking is the aha moment of Why would I want that to exist? And then we can go from there. Medical, as I said earlier, is very interesting. We're beginning to see a lot of things happening in medical, smart pills, smart Band-Aids, just to be connected as we're getting healthier. So, I will end with this question. What's the next thing in our lives of which we will feel naked if we do not have them with us? I believe that will define the clutter around the cloud. So thank you.